to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today I am going to be doing my May wrap-up, which is where I talk about all the books I read, the things I wrote, and some personal life tidbits to keep you guys kind of up to date on what I'm doing with my life. Now, I actually read 6 books this month, so I'm going to try to just breeze through them and not over talk about anything in particular. So I'm sorry if you wanted a little bit more in-depth discussions, but it's just not going to happen because I have a lot to go through. So let's start with the books I read. I first finished Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and I have an entire in-depth analysis on my channel. It is linked above and below, and I really would appreciate if you go check out that video. It's a discussion on the book versus the movie that came out last month. I worked really hard on that. It's a pretty long video, and you know, the algorithm doesn't really like me, so I would love it if you guys went to go check it out because it does have my in-depth thoughts on the book, the writing, and on the mental health rep. I then finished That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. This is a romantasy book with a Black main character in a Southern-inspired fantasy world, and I really had fun with this story. It was basically, as the title says, this mead maiden is at her town festival, gets a little too drunk, stumbles into the woods, gets into a fight with somebody, and then accidentally finds a demon who is stuck. When she helps him and gets him released from his problem, he then basically is like, well, I owe you a debt, so you're gonna come with me on my adventure to kind of defeat this Lich Queen, and then I will repay you. And again, it's romantasy, so it was a really good time. I liked the setting, I liked the story, I liked a lot of the side characters, and I really liked the romance. I thought it was really well done. I thought the consent was well done. I liked that they were very respectful. The demon was an absolute gentleman and really focused on her pleasure, which was appreciated. And overall, it was really funny as well. So I do think I would continue with this series. I believe there are 3 books out, or there's about to be a 3rd book out in the series, following different women in this world. And I think I would continue with it. It was a really fun time. It was a very quick read, and I actually laughed out loud a few times while listening to the audiobook. Next, I finished The Unboxing of a Black Girl by Angela Shante. This is a collection of poems that is about Angela Shante's life. So it is a memoir in poetry, and I really appreciated this collection. It was well done. I enjoyed her style of writing, as well as getting a glimpse into the life of someone that's very different than me. Angela Shante is a Black woman, and she experienced quite a lot of different situations, including some sexual assaults and racism, and that is talked about in this poetry collection. And again, as somebody who is never going to experience that and has never experienced it, I do appreciate being able to, I felt like I was really getting an intimate part of her life, and I really appreciated what this did. It just made me feel like I was more aware of the world around me, being in an isolated small town in Pennsylvania. So I definitely would recommend this. It's a very quick collection to read, and it's very powerful. And if Angela Shante decides to put out another collection, I will definitely buy it in the future. Next, I read Feybound by Sara El Arifi, and it follows these 2 sisters named Yirin and Lettel. They are half siblings. I can't remember if I think they have different dads, but they are basically cast out. Yirin is cast out because she, on the battlefield, makes a decision that ends up getting her entire squadron killed. And because of that, she is exiled to the Fey lands. And they don't really know much about the Fey because they have been in exile, extinct, whatever, for years. And her sister Lettel decides to follow after her. Lettel's companion also follows. So there's kind of like these 3 people that are in this story, and they're discovering what it means to be Fae and how the elves' traditions are basically impacting the Fae. And it was a very unique fantasy world. I liked that it had the distinction between Fae and elves, and even humans to some degree. And I enjoyed the premise of the story. It definitely wasn't my favorite. There were definitely times I just lost focus. I found it a little bit boring at times. And a big complaint, which occasionally bothered me and occasionally didn't, but what I saw online a lot, is that the language that it's written in sometimes was bothersome. It sounded very stiff at times, and other times it sounded like it belonged in this world. So sometimes I think that probably played into when I was paying attention more and versus when I was kind of losing interest. But I don't know if I would continue the series yet, but I have this beautiful copy, and this could be one that I think I might try to reread before I decide if I'm going to continue in the series. But I was happy to have just a diverse book to try this month, and like I said, it's beautiful, and I do love this edition very much. Next, I read Riot Baby by Toshi Anibuki. Probably said that name wrong. I know he said it in the audiobook, and I wish I could remember now when I am talking about it. But this was also a great read. It is just a novella, so it's a very quick book. And I tried to read this a couple years ago. I think reading it, the language of the novel sometimes tripped me up, so I decided to listen to it, and that was so much easier because hearing the author say the words made it just so much better to consume. It's basically set in New York, and it's a very subtle fantasy because basically the main character's sister has these abilities where she can kind of bend things with her mind, like make things explode, read minds, read the future, all that kind of stuff. And as she gets older, her powers continue to develop, and nobody really knows where or why these powers exist, but they impact every single thing that our main character does. And the main character, this is his sister that has the abilities, and he's kind of in this zone of being a kid who's growing up in the hood and how that affects him while also having this magical sister. And I think there's a lot of great commentary in it, and I really enjoyed how it was written. This is my first book by the author, and I do think I would be willing to try some more. I think maybe in an audio format again because I liked this format so much, but I think it's really worthwhile just to listen to and experience like his connotations with the words and the language and everything. He did a very fantastic job narrating it, and I think that helped because I previously, like I said, I tried to read it and I struggled with it, but overall I like it. I don't have much to say. It's so short that I can't really give you much more because then it's going to spoil everything, but again, great book. Okay, we're done. Lastly, I read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I went into this completely blind. I thought maybe it could be a vampire book because The Familiar and being familiar with vampires and whatever. It's not, but I loved it, honestly. This might be some of Leigh Bardugo's best work. It's a very subtle book following this woman who is in like the Spanish Inquisition period, and she has magic, but magic is known but also super rare, so people are like, you know, wanting to capitalize on this and or fearful, and she's just trying to live. Like, her life has not been perfect, so she's just trying to get by, and she thinks maybe if she is like a royal magic user to these people, maybe she'll just survive a little bit longer. But of course nothing is as it seems. There's people who are always like up to nefarious deeds, and overall I just love this. I was very much hooked. Like, it might not be my favorite of hers, but at the same time it is. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just so good. Like, I liked this more as I kept passing time away from it, where I was like, oh wow, like, it's so subtle. Like, the plot is there, but it's really about the character's evolution and understanding like past and present. And this time, there's a lot of Jewish culture in it, and how being a Jew was not an okay thing to be back then, because if they find out, like, things might happen. So I really appreciated just the history and the writing and just everything about it. I love it. This was probably my favorite book of the month, so I definitely would recommend. And honestly, this whole month for itself, like, I didn't have anything below a 3-star, so it was a great month for reading. And that is all the books I read. So now we are going to go into the things I wrote, which will probably be much shorter because I don't have too much updates to share. The biggest update I had is that I finished my Project Vampire. I finished around the 52,000 word mark, and it was a much needed ending. I just needed to get that out. I know I have work to do ahead, and I am happy where I ended because edits are going to be so rewarding, I could just tell. I have an entire playlist documenting my journey doing the Readsy course, which I also finished in May, as well as my novel writing experience, and I will leave them down below so you can check if you're interested. The only other major thing that happened was I did get a rejection for a short story. I had put in for the Once Upon a Book Club novella contest. So basically every year they do a novella contest for an anthology that would be included in their advent calendar in December. Basically, every item in the box has a short story that goes with it. So it's a really cool thing. I applied last year and I also got rejected. The thing that sucks this year is last year they said I was in one of the final cuts, which made me very excited. This year I just got rejected. It wasn't anything special. So it was probably the choice of story. Last year I did more of a whimsical fantasy story that I submitted, and this year I did a horror short story, which I was really proud of, but I just felt like it probably wasn't the vibe they were going for. And that was on me. I could have chose a different story, but I didn't. So I submitted my writing sample for that and I got rejected. But we're gonna keep trying every year. One day we'll get in that box, I swear it. But that's pretty much it. I didn't write anything else. I had thought maybe I would write a short story here or do something more, but I just didn't do it. It was a rough month. And as we head into the personal tidbits, I will just kind of say that May was like a 50-50 split. The first half of the month was really rough, and it was taxing. It was very taxing, which is why I was really trying to push through and get Vampire done with the quality that it was, because I didn't have the energy in me anymore. The second half of the month was a little bit better, and I was able to at least enjoy some bits in my life. I did make a summer bucket list at the end of May for everything that I would like to accomplish, because I realized that the last couple summers, especially after COVID, I just haven't done the stuff that I used to love doing because of one thing or another. I'm either grinding so much with my writing, or I'm busy at work, or I'm doing all these things that keep me inside. I made a lot of goals that are, 1, free or really cheap, and 2, mostly to do with outside. And I was able to do a side-by-side ride with my husband in May, which was really fun. We have a side-by-side. It's an ATV vehicle. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I don't know how many people in the world are aware of what they are, but it's a 2-seater, so we sit side by side versus like an ATV quad that you would sit front and back. We used to have one of those, but it was just harder to drive and enjoy our rides, so we got the side-by-side instead. And we also went to 90s trivia night, and we won. And I was terrible, personally. Thank God I had teammates who were competent, but it was really fun, and I'm glad we got to do that. I also watched a ton of movies. We watched 6 movies in May, and I'm just gonna quickly go through them and give you my out of 5-star rating. So we watched Bottoms, which I gave a 4 out of 5. It's like a satire, high school kind of movie, and I found it really funny and I enjoyed it. Kong vs. Godzilla, I initially gave a 3 out of 5, but honestly, I could care less about the movie. I don't remember it. It was action movies. I'd probably give it more of a 2 for enjoyment, because I mostly wrote while we watched it. I can't remember the subtitle of this now, but it's Please Don't Destroy, something of Foggy Mountain or something like that. It's the Saturday Night people who do their little Please Don't Destroy, that's their troupe, and they do some videos for Saturday Night Live, so they made their own movie. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. It was funny in some parts. It was stupid in others. It's one of those movies that you just put on and you probably don't watch again, but it was enjoyable while you watched it. Then we watched The Fall Guy, and I loved it. That was a great movie. 4 out of 5 stars. We watched Rapture-palooza, which is an older movie. It came out in the early 2010s, and it has Anna Kendrick in it. I don't know how we missed it. It was in the time when she was in Pitch Perfect, but I don't ever remember seeing it advertised. We just randomly found that, so we watched that. 2.5 out of 5. Again, some funny parts. It was kind of weird. It was sometimes a little bit too out there, but it was a good time while we watched it. And then we watched Boy Kills World with Bill Skarsgård. 3 out of 5 stars. I liked some parts of it, and then it started to become kind of obvious of what was going to happen. But it was very much it's one of those movies that you watch for the action and the intense, gory scenes. So be warned that if you're gonna watch Boy Kills World, it's very gory, and it's meant to be that way. And otherwise in May, like I said, half the month was not great, and we didn't really get to celebrate the celebrations we wanted to get to celebrate. Things were not well, but we made the most of it at the end of the month and tried to pick back up. And like I said, most of this is just gonna be trying to enjoy what life we can this summer. And while it was mostly in the beginning of June, On May 31st, it was the first night of our annual Lord of the Rings weekend, and it was really fun. We watched The Fellowship of the Ring, and I made tacos for everybody, and I made homemade guac, and it was just a really nice chill night to hang out with friends. There were 6 of us total, and overall, I really appreciated that weekend in total, but I'll talk maybe a little bit more in my June wrap-up, since June 1st and 2nd is when most of Lord of the Rings weekend happened. So that's my entire month. Mostly, I don't know how I read so much, to be honest. I was on the audiobook grind, and I read so much listening to books, and then the last book I started put me in a little bit of a slump, so I stopped listening to more books after that, but we won't talk about that because that was more of a June thing. And I think I am pretty much caught up with where I'm at in life. So I would really appreciate it if you guys go check out my other videos. That's gonna have a lot more bulk and meat and potatoes in my life. But yeah, that's all the news I got for you. So let me know how your May went, what books you read, what did you write, did you have anything fun happen in your life? I would love to know. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.